Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call a regular meeting of Sumter County Council for Tuesday, September 22nd to order. Ms. V, would you please give us an invocation? May we all stand, please?
Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for bringing us to the table once again to discuss the business of this county. We invite your presence and ask that you help us to make decisions that are pleasing in your sight. We ask your blessings upon every council member, every staff member, the county administrator, and this whole Sumter County government. We ask you to continue to be with those who are infected and affected by the coronavirus. Be with them. We know that you are God that heals, and we are counting and depending on you to continue to heal. We thank you for the progress and numbers that keep going down, and we ask that you continue to let it go away. Help us to let it go away. And as we go through our agenda items, help us to have the wisdom and the understanding to make good decisions. These and all blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, I'd like to just bring to your attention that we do have one change on the agenda. If you would look at number 8, new business, where it says it may be necessary to hold an executive session. We will need to have an executive session, and I ask that we move it to after number 12, after the county administrator's report. So we're moving an executive session to discuss a personnel matter to after the county administrator's report.
Move for the amended agenda.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve the agenda with the change. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve our minutes of our regular meeting for Tuesday, September 8th?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve our minutes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Land use matters, I'd like to bring to your attention that we do have 3. Each of them is a second reading, and we will be having a public hearing before taking the vote. Ms. Helen Rudman.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Slide. Our first request is RZ 2010 at 1650 South Ginyard Parkway. The applicant is Mr. Raymond Smith, the property owner. This is to rezone approximately 2.2 acres of property from agricultural conservation to limited commercial at 1650 South Ginyard Parkway. Slide. It is located just southeast of the intersection of Jimmy Street and South Ginyard Parkway. As you can see in the graphic, it's highlighted in red. It is a bit of a uniquely shaped piece of property. Slide. It is currently zoned agricultural conservation, as is everything that's adjacent to it. But at 2.2 acres in size, it does meet our minimum threshold requirement to create a standalone zoning district. Slide. It is currently heavily wooded. It is 2 separate parcels that would have to be combined for future development. It's my understanding that the smaller of the 2 parcels actually had a house, or still does have a house on it, that's not habitable, so it has been previously developed. Just to the east of it, there is a commercial use for a religious institution, which is also zoned agricultural conservation, and to the west is a single-family dwelling. Slide. The applicant is proposing this rezoning request in order to facilitate future development of a car-stero retail and installation use. The proposal is to construct approximately 4,800 square foot building with brick veneer. It's in the intention to partner with Morris College for training and internship opportunities as part of their business staffing plan. We have reviewed that if the two properties combined, there will be adequate space to meet all the setbacks and development standards that are necessary based on the proposed limited commercial zoning district. As a point of reference, this use is actually a C500 use in the AC zoning district. It's also permitted in general commercial and limited commercial as well as neighborhood commercial. Slide. When we look at rezoning requests, we look at the comprehensive land use plan designation. In this particular instance, it is part of the priority commercial corridor, which does support some level of commercial designation. In this particular instance, the applicant is requesting limited commercial, which is one of the lesser intensive commercial districts, which is suitable with the proximity of existing patterns of development. Over time, we do see that South Ginyard Parkway should have some form of commercial development along this front strip. This just would happen to be one of the first rezoning actions that would facilitate that. Slide. We also had some concerns about some environmental issues on the particular piece of property. On the National Wetlands Inventory, it does show that it could possibly have some freshwater forested and shrub wetlands on it. The applicant is aware of this. They are requesting the rezoning as the first step of the process for development. Because this is the most expedient portion of the process, they do have additional research and investigation that they're going to have to do. There is sewer in proximity, but not very close. It is the city's requirement to get sewer service that they would have to annex in. That's not a possibility in this particular location. So it is our understanding that this facility would be served by on-site septic system for any sewer needs that it does have. There is public water in proximity. Slide. Planning Commission does recommend approval of this request to rezone the property to limited commercial. We do find that it's compatible with the 2040 comp plan. The applicant has been made aware of all of the potential issues that could come up in the development process. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of Ms. Ruhlman? Then I declare the public hearing portion of this RZ 2010 open. Anyone wishing to speak against this rezoning request, please come forward. Please state your name for the record, please, sir.
Jimmy Golden. Good evening, everyone. My land is right beside that property, and it comes behind my lane there. My question is, it's wetland, and you plan on developing it? How can you change wetland into commercial property?
He would have to go through a delineation process with the Corps of Engineers to get a determination on jurisdictional wetlands. That map is an indication that there may be wetlands there, but there are a series of things that have to be done to verify the veracity of that information. And part of that would be having a wetlands consultant go out, do a wetlands delineation on the property to see whether those conditions still exist, and then submit those to the Army Corps of Engineers for a determination on jurisdictional status. If they are non-jurisdictional wetlands, then we would go through our development process that looks at how much of that can be constructed on versus cannot be. So at this point, I don't know if it's going to be developable. We don't have enough information. I hope I answered that question.
Mr. Chairman, but to ask Ms. Rubin, but what we're being requested is a flat rezone.
Correct.
Whether or not it turns out to have wetlands or not, it will, if we approve it, it gets rezoned. And I assume since this gentleman got up when the chairman asked for anyone opposed, he just asked a question or two. I'm assuming he's opposed to this rezoning.
And that's my next question. If you rezone this property, how would that affect that area and my taxes, whatever I pay on my land there, and the traffic's coming through there?
And I would like everyone to know which piece of property he's talking about. He's right next door.
1640, right next door.
I'm familiar with this piece of property because I sold it a long time ago, so I don't know have to recuse myself or anything
So
on it, but
right
I'll
there
do
at
it
the
now.
corner of Jimmy Street.
But I
and
do
South
know he
Vineyard.
lives in the parcel right next door to it.
Right.
That's his residence.
And ma'am, you said it may be wetland, but I've been up there several times because I tried to purchase that land, and I just refused to pay them what they was asking for it. And on your map, it's stated clearly that it's wetland back there.
The National Wetlands Inventory mapping is actually just a tool for an indication. It's not the final say in whether or not it's a wetlands or not. It's just a tool. So as I said, the process for determining whether or not it is a wetland would involve having a wetlands delineation done by a wetlands consultant and having that submitted to the Corps of Engineers.
So this rezoning request does not mean that the applicant can actually go right now and build on this land. There are a bunch of other steps that have to be done before.
Correct. They'd actually have to go through the commercial development review process, which would involve DOT encroachment permits, stormwater approval through the local stormwater utility. They'd have to go through a building design process, through the building department, for codes compliance. Really all this does is put the possibility of development in play using the limited commercial development standards.
Okay.
Looking at that, Charles, it looks like everything around it is residential. Is that correct?
I don't mind going, but she can go.
Ms. McGee, could you speak into the microphone?
Oh.
Or you just take it out, put it in your hand?
Ms. Rubin, I was adjusting my microphone. And I don't think everybody heard my question because I wasn't speaking. I wanted to see where his residence, and that's his actual residence. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Okay, and those other. Oh my. Okay, I see. And everything else in that area is residential? Is that correct?
The predominant use in the area is residential, but it is all zoned agricultural, which does allow a variety of commercial uses by conditional use review.
From our looking from it, Ms. McGinney, this look to the right, that's a church on that parcel.
Correct.
Across the street?
No, down across the street, there's
Well,
two
you-
churches.
you
One
have
across
two
the
churches,
street
one-
down, but one right adjacent to this is
Right.
also a church too.
We have one right beside it and one across the street from it. There's two
Right.
churches there.
I do have another question, Ms. Rudman. When the applicant is requesting to have it rezoned to limited commercial, was there any communication as to what is possibly proposed to be placed there?
Yeah.
Yes, we had extensive conversations with the applicant about what the proposed use is. He's intending to construct a 4,800 square foot car stereo retail and installation facility on that property.
Excuse me, what you say is gonna go there?
Can you go back to that slide that shows that information?
And that's Peace Textiles across the street.
That is Peace Textiles across the street, and off Rainier Boulevard is the county recycling, one of the county recycling centers.
Here's what,
And Ms. Rudman, I know that you weren't the person at the time, but when I was on the planning commission, something like this would be called spot zoning. Do you all still call that?
The
spot
minimum amount of area required to rezone a property to an independent zoning district is 2 acres. This is a 2.2 acre piece of property. So by our regulations, it does not constitute spot zoning.
Yeah, but the concept is there. That's all I have.
okay. Mr. Golden, any other comments?
And going back to the tax, if they do decide to develop this land, how would the tax affect?
The development of this property should have no impact on the tax value of your property, as your property is taxed based on how your property is currently used. So it should have no impact on the assessed value or the taxation on your parcel.
Okay, if I'm trying to read this correctly, it stated something about Morris College want to have something to do with that land?
It's my understanding that the applicant intends to use students at Morris College to offer them some internship opportunities to work at that particular business.
What is the actual proposed business?
Yeah.
It will be a car stereo installation and retail facility.
Oh, no.
So,
Hmm.
Can you go back to that?
I will go back to that slide again.
Car stereo, retail, installation.
So, there could be some loud music
Yes,
being boomed out of some cars when they're testing them out, huh?
right. And we already have one in the area right there in the Family Dollar parking lot, and we don't need another one of those things in there, because right now with the traffic come from Continental, it's a drag strip there every single day. And when you putting that there, it's just another recipe for crime in the neighborhood. We don't need that in that neighborhood, especially with the two churches there.
I just wish it was a larger track with some room to buffer this residential. I mean, and then you go back to down at the bottom where it says, I mean, this could be allowed in the current zoning, in the AC.
It could be done in AC as a C500 use. It would require getting signatures from 69% of the adjacent property owners in approval of it.
Which
Within
is-
500 feet as a C500.
Which at least, gives the neighborhood a little more input than currently are. But I mean, I assume all the neighbors within 500 feet or whatever, I don't know what the distance is in this case, were notified of this request.
All the property owners of record, based on the tax assessor's information, were mailed notification of this meeting.
Was that option that Councilman Eden's talking about discussed with the,
Yes, sir, it was.
They would actually have to have signatures rather than just mailing somebody and not knowing if they got it or not, or, if they understood it or whatever, too.
Right. See, that's the thing, people get they in black and white, you may not really understand exactly the impact that it's having on a community. Something like that would need some elaboration and explanation so that people can really truly understand what is about to happen.
Limited commercial is the least restrictive zoning that this is allowed in, besides the AC. I mean.
It can go in neighborhood commercial
It
as well.
can go in neighborhood commercial.
Yes, if you could back up to the slide that says background. There you go, thank you.
okay, Mr. Golden, thank you so much. Anyone else wishing to speak against this rezoning request?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Jacqueline Wright Williams, and I live on Jimmy Street, and I live behind the Goldens. And I don't think it's a good, idea for them to put it out there, because we already have people breaking in now. So when you bring a business like that and it's got stereos to put in cars, that's what the young people are looking for. So I don't think it's a good opportunity in our neighborhood.
Okay, Ms. Wright, thank you so much. Anyone else wishing to speak against this rezoning request? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak for, in favor of the rezoning request, please come forward.
Yes, sir. How you doing this evening? I'm Raymond Smith. I'm the gentleman that proposed the zoning change. I'd like to actually see this move forward as part of the comprehensive plan for the 2040 rezoning of the whole strip anyway. The reality is growth and development. Unfortunately, there are hurdles that have to be taken into consideration. I know that this particular endeavor is not favorably looked on for a lot of people. However, that may be due to the lack of understanding of what it actually does. It's a cultural thing. Not only that, it leads to some science and technology developments for actually understanding the integration, the 12-volt industry, as well as, despite popular opinion of additional crime, what you actually have to look at is additional security. The area will be secured with video surveillance, alarm system, and have access to the police and fire department should anything arise in a timely manner. So that actually brings additional security to the area. That strip will eventually be developed, whether it's started now or started later. I unfortunately don't have the financial capital that big industry does. If big industry decides that they want to develop it, they're going to do it one way or another. So as far as the gentleman that was interested in purchasing the property, this property was available on the market for over 24 months. Had he had the interest in purchasing the property, that time he had ample amount of time to do so. Unfortunately, I would like to be able to work with these people to, do something together as a community. We do charity events for wounded warriors. We do other charity events. And I'm actually trying to put together a charity event now for Morris College. Their donations they received over the last 12 months is horrible. And so I'm actually working on putting a program together with the gentleman that owned the Love Doctors Field to do a charity event for the college. So I think a lot of people are under the misinterpretation that this industry is not beneficial. It actually is, and it's helping grow and develop not only education, minorities, and alike. So I think this would be a good start in developing the area and helping the community.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of you gentlemen? Do you currently have a business of this nature now?
I do. I'm the gentleman who owns the stereo shop right around the corner. I purchased this property to develop and expand and offer additional services.
Will there be a lot of noise coming from this business?
It's typically tried to be kept at a minimum. The reason for the additional space is to actually kind of contain any testing that is done. So if it's inside the building, it's not near as bad. And of course, we have to take into consideration, the church is nearby and the residents. So anything past, 7, 8 o'clock at night, we will not or do not intend to have any of that going on, and especially in observance on Sundays. We have to take people's thoughts into consideration as well.
But there could be noise.
Potentially.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this rezoning request? Seeing none, I now declare the public hearing to be over. Council, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to know if you could even build on this property before I decide if I want to vote on the rezoning. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but I mean, I don't want to rezone this property and then all of a sudden, there's too much wetlands, you don't have enough land to build what you want to build. I would prefer to see a study done with the wetlands to see if it's possible you can't even build there.
Can I speak on that? To add some additional information, I actually got some prices for that. To have a complete topographical survey, the wetlands delineation, the whole 9 yards is about $12,500. Should I invest that amount of capital into the property prior to it getting rezoned, then I'm out the money. So for me, it's a poor investment to invest that amount of capital into a property that I can't get rezoned.
So you're saying it's going to cost $12,000 to do the study?
That is correct.
Wow.
Now, if you're willing to donate the money to do that, I'll be more than happy to pin this for now.
Thank you again, Mr. Smith.
You're welcome. I'm sorry to interrupt. I do have an email for the quote if you'd like to see that as well.
No, we got it.
Okay.
Council, what is your pleasure? Mr. Attorney, no motion is made and what?
Mr. Chairman.
You have to have a motion for it to pass second reading. So if you don't have a motion at all, then, based on my memory, and no action is taken,
They're like deferring, basically.
no action is taken, so it rolls over to the next agenda.
Mr. Chairman, and I will say this, and you know, I think that this council has the propensity to want to please everybody and do it. And so, in saying that, I just want to apologize to the gentleman and hope that he can find a place to develop follow his dreams and to find a more community-friendly operation to place on that property. And so, in saying that, I would like to make a motion to deny this request.
There is a motion on the table to deny second reading of RZ 2010.
Mr. Chairman, I would also want to just kind of go along, piggyback on what Vivian just said. I think we just had a Dollar General out there on 261 that was trying to be put right beside a bunch of houses, and they came up here and did not.
Mr. Baker,
Yes.
we've already had a discussion. We got a motion on the table.
Well, I'm just wanting to
Do
explain.
you want to second it or? Yeah.
How long would it take to go through the other process in EC? Do you know? How long would that process take?
He'd have to get the signatures from the adjacent property owners,
So it's up to him.
so it's up to him.
You can get it done in a week, probably.
If he gets enough signatures of affirmative approval, then he could get the use approval in place. But part of that use approval does involve going through the site plan review process.
Council, again, we have a motion on the table.
Mr. Chairman, we have a discussion without seconding the motion?
No, that's what I'm saying.
I second the motion.
Okay, all right.
You want a discussion?
Okay, now, we have a motion and a second to deny second reading of RZ 2010. Is there any discussion?
I guess I have another question.
Now's the time.
And if it is denied, in normal cases, he can't come back for a year with the same request, but he could come back for
He
a
could
reason,
come back with a different,
an AC.
he could come back with a different zoning district request.
It's not the same.
Any other discussion?
But I would rather it not be rezoned limited commercial myself. I mean, maybe. If he wants to go the AC route, then, you know, that's his choice, but,
We have a motion and a second to deny rezoning request, second reading of rezoning of number 2010. All in favor?
Unreadiness now, Mr. Edens just said something that could be a substitute motion if this, you know, I don't know, I guess we would have to ask.
That's up to the applicant.
Yeah, you know.
That's not a motion at this
I'm
point.
sorry?
I don't think that is appropriate. That's up to the applicant to go back to the planning commission and come back to us with that request. The motion in the second on the table is to deny second reading.
Okay, proceed then.
Correct?
Correct.
Again, we've got a motion and a second to deny second reading of RZ 2010. All in favor of denying second reading? Aye. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Second reading? 5. Okay.
With yourself?
Yeah. Okay. Second reading of RZ 2010 is denied. Ms. Rubin, RZ 2012.
If you could please go to the first slide for RZ 2012. Thank you. RZ 2012 is a rezoning request at the corner of Patriot Parkway and Deschamps Road in the county. The applicant is J. Seal and Son. Louis Tisdale for Black River Land Services was the applicant representative. I'm not certain whether Mr. Tisdale or a representative is in the audience this evening. They are the potential developers of a 2.00 acre portion of property at that intersection. They're requesting to rezone from agricultural conservation to limited commercial. Slide. It's actually a portion of a larger 7-acre tract. They're just interested in the 2 acres right at the intersection of Patriot Parkway and Deschamps, with frontage on both Patriot Parkway and Deschamps. The area that you see in red is the approximate location of the proposed 2 acres. Just to the south is the Stafford Meadows subdivision. Slide. It is heavily wooded right now with planted pine, as most of this area is. So there's some significant buffering between this location and the adjacent uses. What you see on the far right of the screen is actually a multi-family development called Patriot Palms. And then all to the far side of that is the First Church of the Nazarene. Slide. This property is under agricultural conservation, but the adjacent tracts are residential multifamily and residential 6. The Church of the Nazarene is part of the Sumter West Plan Development, which is a large mixed-use plan development of commercial, residential, and community facilities with Patriot Park and several subdivisions, as well as a small area of commercial development. Slide. This has been requested to facilitate development at that corner of a gas station and convenience store center. It is currently undeveloped. Slide. This is what the property looks like today. The first picture on the left is actually right on Deschamps Road, looking towards the site to the east. The second picture is standing across the street from Patriot Parkway, looking towards the site down Deschamps Road. Slide. This is in a priority commercial and mixed-use node where we do see that commercial zoning is appropriate in context with the adjacent residential development. These are 2 minor arterial roads that are really designed to handle the capacity that you would see from commercial traffic. And the adjacent development, meaning the property to the north, south, and east that immediately abuts it, is currently either commercial or undeveloped in nature. Slide. Planning Commission is recommending approval of this request. Rezoning from AC to LC is consistent with the 2040 plan. It is located at the intersection of those 2 minor arterial roadways, and the development pattern surrounding the site does support the request. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I got a quick question. Do they own the whole 7 acres?
No, sir, they only have that 2 acres under contract pending the outcome of this request. That's why the entire tract is not part of the rezoning request.
Any other questions or comments from council? Then I declare the public hearing for RZ 2012 to be open. Anyone wanting to speak against this rezoning request, please come forward. Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak for this rezoning request, please come forward. Public hearing is closed. Council, what is your pleasure?
Question, Mr. Chairman, question of Ms. Rubin. And I know I probably just asked it a little while ago, the notification process, was all of that subdivision behind here notified?
Anybody within 500 feet of the boundary of the larger parent tract was notified,
So that would not
and the
include
property
it.
has been posted for the last 15 days.
But that would not have included anyone in that subdivision probably, but, who slows down to read the yellow sign, but,
When I say from the parcel boundary, I'm actually talking about the 7-acre parent tract, not from the 2-acre chunk at the corner. So if you'll notice in this graphic that you see on the screen, the black line that mirrors it is actually outside of the property.
Mr. Chairman, has a motion and a second.
I didn't hear the motion or the second.
Already motion, I make a second to approve.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's been a motion and a second to approve second reading of RZ 2012. Any discussion?
one more question. That is the least intensive zoning for this use?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Ah,
Aye. All opposed? Second reading is approved. Ordinance Amendment 2003, Ms. Rubin.
Slide. This is a request being brought forth by the planning department staff to add general merchandise stores with SIC code 53 in the limited commercial and neighborhood commercial zoning districts, which would essentially split general merchandise stores into two categories. One would be stores that are 11,000 square feet or smaller, and the other would be over 11,000 square feet. Slide. Currently, SIC code 53 includes all retail stores that sell multiple lines of merchandise, such as dry goods, apparel, accessories, home furniture, furnishings, small wares, hardware, food. These would be department stores, variety stores, and then your miscellaneous general merchandise stores. So these categories actually include everything all the way from a big box like Walmart and Target all the way down to a Dollar Tree or the Dollar General. It's a very large, broad array of uses that fall under general merchandise stores. Currently in the county, the only place that it's allowed by right is the general commercial zoning district, and it's a C500 use in the agricultural conservation district. Slide. This proposal would actually be to create two distinct size classifications for SSC code 53, which would be 11,000 square feet of gross floor area or less, and then more than 11,000 square feet. We would look at including the 11,000 square feet or smaller in the limited commercial and neighborhood commercial zoning districts as conditional uses. This would be a staff level review. It would not require signatures from adjacent property owners, but it would require rezoning action. Really where this thought process was coming from is that in recent past, there's been a series of rezoning actions to try and rezone property that's in the midst of agricultural zoning to general commercial, which is our most intense commercial district, and parts of the community where it really doesn't make sense to open up general commercial uses to what are fundamentally very rural areas. Slide. As proposed, we would create specific conditions that are applicable only to that SIC code 53. As part of that conditional use review process, they would have to meet all other standard conditional use criteria, which looks at very general issues like ingress and egress, traffic flow and control, safety, compatibility with the neighborhood, etc. all other development standards for the zoning district that it's in, as well as limiting site access to one access per street frontage. Slide. We'd also set out some finite landscaping standards. Currently, the county zoning ordinance doesn't have very, very stringent landscaping and buffering standards when you're talking about from one use to another. It just says that there has to be a 5 or a 10-foot buffer depending on adjacent uses, with no real planning criteria other than some very general information. As proposed, we would lay out some very specific planting standards when it's abutting residential uses, put out some very specific street front planting standards so that there's a street buffer so that it's not just a building sitting out in the middle of nowhere with not a stick of vegetation on it. So if it were to be placed adjacent to a residential use, you'd be looking at a 15-foot buffer that has a mix of canopy trees, understory trees, evergreens, and tall shrubs that are capable of producing a year-round 6-foot-tall screen that's opaque over 3 growing seasons, or they can substitute a privacy fence into that blend to help reduce that buffer width and reduce the amount of planting that they have to do, but there would still be vegetated screening, and there'd also be a distinct separation between that use and a residential use. If they were abutting a vacant piece of property or agricultural use or religious or commercial uses, that buffering standard would be reduced. It would be more in line with what you would expect between 2 commercial uses, so it would be significantly less in terms of creating visual privacy screening. You'd be looking at a 5-foot buffer width with 2 canopy trees and 2 understory trees and then some small shrubs. This is very similar to what you see with some of the newer commercial developments around the community. Slide. If they were adjacent to an industrial use, we'd also add some buffering, which would really just create some privacy screening between seasons. Require some tree islands in the parking lots so that it's not just a massive sea of asphalt for the parking. And then irrigation systems would have to be required. We'd also encourage them to retain any existing trees on the property that are already in place to meet some of these buffering standards. Slide. We've set out some real standards for dumpster enclosures, so they would have to screen their garbage collection areas with an opaque fence on 3 sides, consisting of either masonry, stucco, or vinyl exterior materials, with an opaque gate required. We would also say that we didn't want any wood privacy fencing around it. Wood has a maintenance issue in the long term, with a maximum height limited at 8 feet. Also implementing some exterior lighting standards so that there are full cutoff or shielded exterior light fixtures on that property to help avoid spillover to adjacent residential lots, as well as adjacent non-residential lots. There's foot candle information that we would be included in there. So the lighting plan would address that. Slide. There's some cleanup work that we would need to do in the ordinance to revise some existing descriptive issues that we have some confusion between SIC Code 59. Right now, parts of the ordinance say SIC Code 59 is general merchandise stores, but they're really miscellaneous retail stores. So we'd make those corrections, and then we'd also correct the references in the ordinance. Slide. Planning Commission does recommend approval of this request. We do find that smaller retail uses within this classification don't have the same land use impacts and transportation impacts that the big box general merchandise retailers have. And the specific conditions are really designed to mitigate our conflicts with the less intensive land uses, which are more likely to see in the limited commercial and neighborhood commercial zoning districts. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Ms. Rudman?
I know we go ahead and go with the 3rd reading, but if it'd be okay with council, I'd like to send this to the Land Use Committee to look at carefully, because I'll talk to Mike. Yeah. I have some questions. I mean, you got all landscaping in here. I mean, we are rewriting the landscape ordinance in this ordinance. It didn't make sense with some of these requirements.
No, the landscaping.
We already have a landscape ordinance, so why do they require more landscaping in this?
Well, generally with conditional use review items that we have specific review standards for, we have taken the opportunity to spell out exactly what kind of buffering and screening we would want in place for a particular use for compatibility purposes. So this would only apply to this particular use classification in these 2 particular districts. It doesn't apply to any other zoning districts or any other uses.
So every district has its own landscape requirements.
Pardon?
Every district has its own landscape
We
requirements.
actually have a general landscaping standard for the entire county in Article 8 of the zoning ordinance. This is just clearly spelled out landscaping expectations for this use in these zoning districts as a conditional use review. This would not modify the landscaping ordinance for the rest of the county.
Can we go back one page or one slide?
What are you looking, so I know where I'm
To
going?
the industrial, their industrial use, what, I think that was that one.
Mhm.
No, that's not the page, I'm sorry.
So they can,
Might have been the next page.
you wanted that page?
Oh, yeah, it was the adjacent to ag use with
If you
5-foot buffer with 2 canopy trees. So what does that mean, 2 trees? I mean, for the whole, if there's a
No,
side?
no, that's per 100 linear feet.
That's per 100, okay.
Yeah.
And I know I may have a question on that irrigation, requiring irrigation. I just think, you know, you can require them to have to maintain these trees and shrubs and all, and it's up to them if they want to carry a 5-gallon bucket out there and water it, or a garden hose and water each one of them one by one, or put in the irrigation. I'm not sure, you know. But anyway, that's questions we can answer before third reading.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Rudman? Hearing none. Public hearing for ordinance amendment 2003 is now open. Anyone wishing to speak against ordinance amendment 2003, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak for ordinance amendment 2003, please come forward. Now declare the public hearing for ordinance amendment 2003 closed.
Move for approval of second reading.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we approve second reading for ordinance amendment 2003. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving second reading of ordinance amendment 2003, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ordinance amendment 2003, second reading is approved. Thank you, Ms. Rubin. Come now to committee reports. The Fiscal Tax and Property Committee meeting did meet at 5:30. All committee members were present. We received information on 2 economic development issues. No action was taken. Any reports from council members on other meetings, trainings, or conferences?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Baden?
I would like to report on a meeting that I attend. It's called the Veterans Upward Bound Program. That's sponsored by Central Carolina Technical College. It's a program that consists of 125 veterans who go in and seek counseling and help, as well as any training that they can get in addition to education. However, every month we have a veterans talk, conversation, what we call Vet Talk. And about 40 to 50 of those members of that group used to meet once a month, and we'll discuss issues that are affecting us as far as our health, education, and so forth. 75% of that group is African American. This morning when I woke up, I thanked the Lord that I was seeing another day. But when I went and looked in the mirror, thank the Lord too, I was still black. Today, black citizens in Sumter County continue to die at a disproportionate rate. Sumter County Coroner reports 56 deaths in Sumter County due to COVID-19. However, South Carolina DHEC says there are 77 deaths. Black people make up just 27% of South Carolina population, but account for 46% of the deaths, COVID deaths. In Sumter County, black citizens make up 49% of the population. Shamefully, they account for 76% of the COVID deaths in this county. In other words, for every 4 citizens who die from COVID-19, 3 are African Americans. This is shameful because Sumter County members, council members, have the authority to reduce the number of COVID deaths by passing a mask ordinance similar to the mask ordinance approved by members of Sumter City Council. Sumter Mayor Joe McElveen, who's also a veteran, wrote an article that was published in the Sumter Item on August 29th. In that article, he shared the significant difference in the infection rate of counties with mask ordinance, 15% decrease, to counties without mask ordinance, 30% increase. He thanked all citizens of Sumter for masking up. He stated, "Imagine where our numbers would be if everyone wore a face covering." For the health, safety, and welfare of all citizens of Sumter County, regardless of their race or military service, I'm going to once again request that the members of Sumter County Council approve a mask mandate ordinance. And just for the record, the veterans that have served in the military, they are American patriots. They are not suckers. Thank you.
Monthly reports are in our packet.
Yes, sir.
Okay. County Administrator's report.
Mr. Chair, 2 quick items. The first, just to give a quick COVID case update. According to DHEC, we have now 3,145 cases from Sumter County. From our last meeting, that's an increase of 227 cases, or an average about 16 per day. We have one additional death that Mr. Baton wasn't aware of. We just found out later today. So we now have 57 fatalities in Sumter. We had the last 2. We've had 2 since our last meeting. One was a white female and one was a black female. Out of the veterans, that was the question Mr. Baton asked last time, we have, again, 57 deaths, and we've had 7 of those are veterans, so represents about 12% veterans in our fatalities in Sumter County. The second item I'd like to report on, of course, last week we're all from me that last Thursday we went through another terrible storm in Sumter County. The remnants of Hurricane Sally crossed across our state. According to the Weather Service, we had over 6 inches of rain that was dropped in Sumter County. That's the largest amount in the state of South Carolina per any county. We also had 3 tornado warnings in our area during the day. One, according to the Weather Service, we had 1 touchdown near East Brewington Road as an EF1. It was a very terrible storm for Sumter County. We are still dealing with issues related to that, particularly on our road system and our drainage system in our county. I would like to say that our Public Works Department has done an excellent job getting out and identifying the worst areas and immediately addressing those issues, but it will be something that we will probably be addressing at least for the next few weeks. As you know, it's difficult to work in an area that's wet, so we have to wait for it to dry out. Our county is very diverse in the types of soil conditions from one end to the other, and some areas we're dealing with clay, in other areas we're dealing with a lot of sand, and each condition is a little bit different. But I'd like to commend our Public Works Department for getting out and working these areas as best they can. I still ask the community if they're having issues to give us a call, and we'll try to address it as best we can. But Again, 6 inches of rain in that short period of time was a difficult task. Also, I'd like to report that Second Mill Dam, which y'all know is a county property, we were following it closely, and the system did work as designed. The water level did increase rapidly. We lift the gates automatically, and that reduced as much as we possibly could without flooding the people downstream. But it allowed the water on our new overflow system on the west side of, the east side of the property. We did get water going over the road by about 1 or 2 inches, so that did alleviate the pressure on our spillway system, so it worked as designed. And the folks below us were not flooded out. They did have high waters, but it did not get into the areas that it did in the 2015. So we think the system worked. The waters, we had to drop the spillway on Sunday after Thursday because the water levels had already dropped about 2 feet in the pond. So it was a significant impact when we opened up that spillway, but it was controlled and managed, and it worked like it was supposed to. That's all I have, sir.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I had 8 inches at my house.
And I heard that it was like 9 inches out my way.
I heard as much as 12 inches in certain parts of the county.
Wow.
But I'm just quoting what the National Weather Service accounted for.
Backstroke. Okay. Members of council, as I stated at the beginning of our meeting, we do need to have an executive session
I make a motion we go into executive session, Mr. Chairman.
to discuss a personnel matter.
Yes, sir.
We're now in executive session, and we will send it back over to
These are bandolinos, that belt. Yeah, they carry them, they have them all the time. If you go in there and they don't exercise, ask them if it can be ordered.
Motion to come out of executive session.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we come out of executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this contract with Gary Mixon as the administrator with the county.
For an extension of 2 years.
Huh?
Extending the contract.
Yeah, extending his contract for 5 years.
A second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded that we extend our county administrator's contract by 2 years, making it a total of 5. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded that we adjourn. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Congratulations, Mr. Mixon.
Thank you, sir.